thrifting can be a little chaotic. It can be overwhelming, especially if you're going with kids. This is something that I personally had to overcome, and a lot of you. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, just welcome. How are you? In today's video, we are simply going to talk about all of my tips and little tricks that I use while I'm thrifting. I thrift a lot. If you guys are new here, I try to thrift as much as possible before going to like the big box stores like Target, you know, you name it, or shopping online. I love to hit the thrift stores first for many reasons. It saves you money and it's better for the environment. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of insight on how I go about thrifting and all of the things that I keep in mind, the kind of things I look for, and just how I navigate the thrift store just in general in shopping, because I know it can be overwhelming. You guys do tell me how you feel about thrifting. And also, if you're new here, my name is Noelle. I do all kinds of thrifting, motherhood, and homemaking content. Yes.
Mom!
What? If you're new here, my name is Noelle. I do all kind of homemaking, thrifting, baking, cooking from scratch, some motherhood content in there as well. And yeah, so welcome if you're new. But today's video is all about how to navigate the thrift store and all of the things that I do to make my thrift trips easier, especially with kids, because I usually go with kids. Sometimes I get to go without them, and that's really, really nice. I love to thrift by myself. Sorry, kids are going like in and out and you're gonna hear the door slamming, and this is just real life. There are kids that live here and it's summertime and they are just, you know, having fun outside with my mom. Anywho, so yeah, let's get into it. So one of the first things I would say to, if you have thrifting anxiety, let's talk a little bit about that, because that is definitely a thing for some people. Is thrifting can be a little chaotic. It can be overwhelming, especially if you're going with kids. This is something that I personally had to overcome, and a lot of you tell me as well, that sometimes you just have anxiety going into the thrift store. One, that you don't know what you're gonna find, or if you're gonna be able to find what you're looking for. You just never know sometimes, and it's just a little bit, it can make people a little bit anxious, especially if they don't keep the store organized and nice. So I like to go grab a drink. I know this probably sounds a little silly, but it kind of just sets the mood and the vibe. I love to shop and sip, like go get a tea or a coffee and just like sip my way through the thrift store while I'm looking. Sip and shift my way through the thrift store. I don't know, it's just something about the vibe and the mood that just kind of like calms me down, makes me just be in the moment and be very intentional about my shopping at the thrift store. So I love to romanticize it a little bit. I love to romanticize it a little bit and just sip and shop, okay? So number one thing I usually do before I step foot in the thrift store is stop somewhere for a drink. And luckily, my favorite coffee shop is like right around the corner from where I normally thrift, that has like all 4 thrift stores I normally visit and frequent. So that is very, that's a little blessing. I love that. Okay, so another thing that is super important when we talk about thrifting anxiety and the chaos that sometimes is just the thrift store, okay? It could be chaotic. Take it one section at a time, okay? Like, do not overwhelm yourself. Like I said, take your time. Go through each section and don't feel like you have to look at everything. I feel like that's another thing. You can kind of just look with your eyeballs. We'll get to that in a minute on how I kind of skim over the things that I know I'm not interested in versus I am. But definitely take your time if possible. Do not go when you're on a time crunch. Usually, unless you're a frequent thrifter like myself, or if you go very often, then going on a time crunch isn't that bad. But, you know, take your time. Go when you have time, you know. And just don't let the chaos get to you, and just take your time going through the sections that you are looking at. Okay, so here's a big one. If you get overwhelmed in the thrift store, have a checklist. I always have a checklist in my head on the kind of things that I'm always on the look for. Sometimes I'll go for very specific things like, okay, I need a bread pan to make more loaves of bread, or oh, I need another blanket, or something like that. Oh, we need, I don't know, some shoes. Shoes you have to be kind of careful with. I always look for brand new shoes. usually, if otherwise I won't buy them. But have a checklist in your head on what you're trying to achieve and purchase. So for instance, some things that I'm always on the lookout for would vintage candle holders. If you guys are new here, I love all things antique and vintage. That's kind of my vibe, my thing. I love to collect just old things because they just have character and a whole past life to me, and I just love that. So candle holders, quilts, all kinds of things. Artwork, frames, rugs, baskets, cast iron, pans. That is a really good one to always look out for. Cookware, clothes, shoes, dresses, sweaters. I guess that goes with clothes, but I'm always on the lookout for these things. Crocs, vintage kid toys for myself, and just children books in general. So I guess you would say books. I'm always on the lookout for some good books, and like cozy blankets, and I think I already said quilts. So those are just a few things I'm always stepping on kid toys again. Whenever I film these videos, you best believe my floor is covered in kid stuff, and you gotta watch out for those Legos, okay, because they are a killer. Anywho, those are just a few things that I always keep an eye out for when I'm thrifting or antique shopping. It's just a given in my head. I'm always looking for more quilts. I'm always looking for like cozy blankets and Crocs and baskets and so many things, kid toys, whatever. So I think it's always good to keep that mental list in your head when you're going. That way you can be very intentional about the things you are picking up. And that way you feel a little less overwhelmed. Unless there's something you're looking for in specific, like I said, for instance, a cake pan, a bread pan, a Pyrex, whatever you're looking for, just make a mental list that you always can refer to. And it just makes thrifting that much easier. It's fly season again. Summer. Okay, so here's another thing that I always do is go on senior day. This might sound a little like, I don't care how it sounds, just go on senior day. Senior day is great. Find out when your local senior day is. Mine is usually, I'm not even gonna say what day it is, but just find out your local senior day and you get a good discount if you have a senior with you. So that's like the whole the catch, right? Most of you guys watching are probably not seniors, so find a senior and take them with you and have a thrifting day. I always take my mom with me. She loves to thrift, and so she always gets me that discount. You hear? Okay, like get those coins saved if you can. So find out when senior day is and bring a senior if you can, because that discount is lovely. Okay, so when looking for clothes at the thrift store, especially being I would consider myself more on the plus size of the spectrum of sizing, a very proud plus size woman, I would say it is really hard to find clothes at the thrift store. It's very far and few in between, especially with my style preference. I love my neutrals, but I do love patterns, and prints and textures is like big for me. So a way that I always find things that I like is just quickly skimming through and looking at patterns first. Patterns usually is what draws me, patterns and colors. So those are the two things I look for first before I commit to actually like taking it off of the rack and looking at it. And then, you know, I go from there, style, size, obviously size first, then style. But that's how I really go quickly through the clothing section, is just looking at patterns first, colors, then look at the sizing, the style. So that's how I go through clothes quickly, because the clothes section, let's be real, can be so overwhelming. And a lot of the time you'll find something and be like, cool, but it's not my size. So I know all you plus size women out there, feel me, it is hard to find good clothing options at the thrift store, but they do have them. You just gotta look, and you gotta be a little bit more intentional with your looking. But that's really how I go about it, and it makes it a lot easier and saves me a lot of time and stress at the thrift store. So alright, so another really good thing you can do if you do get overwhelmed at the thrift store is make a Pinterest mood board. I see a lot of people doing this. I've done it a few times. It's not something I do on the regular, but you can make a Pinterest little mood board of like outfits or home decor or whatever you hope to find at the thrift store, and you put it all on a little mood board. I know you guys know how to do this. And then I would say not have very high expectations for the mood board, but try to find things that are similar. So I have my mood board in my head constantly on the things that I love and would hope to find at the thrift store, but I would say it does help to see it visually and kind of all put together, and you never know, you might find new styles that you love and you want to find. You might find styles that you would love to try or love to try to find. So I highly recommend to make a Pinterest mood board, especially if you're new to thrifting, but do not have too high of expectations when it comes to finding everything on that board. You might find one or two things, or you might find nothing, but the more you go, the more likely you are to find stuff. And yeah, frequent a good amount of thrift stores in your area too. That helps kind of with, you know, your chances of finding stuff. A really good lesson that I have learned a few times is do not sleep on something that you found when you walked in or found in a certain area and then leave that area and then come back like, oh, I think I will get that. It's probably going to be gone. So I suggest you put it in your cart. You think about it for a little bit. That way it doesn't get swooped up, because that will happen at the thrift store, especially on those busy days. Something you love can go quickly because there are a lot of thrifters out there. They know what they're looking for and it can get swooped up quick. So if you find something you love, I highly suggest to just grab it, think about it, and then buy it if you want to, and then put it back if you don't. That way you don't have to worry about seeing someone else walk around the thrift store with something that you really were eyeing but wasn't sure at the time, and then you're like, damn. So another thing that I would suggest, one of my things that I highly adore, I was talking a little bit about it earlier, is going thrifting without the kids. Like, I love taking my kids to the thrift store and we love exploring together, but like, let's be real, it's fun to go by yourself. Go with the girlies, have a girls' day. It's fun to go. Like, you're not super you're not on this like imaginary time clock when it comes to having kids go with you, because that's a whole different experience is when you take your kids with you. I love doing that, like I just said, but I also love going by myself or going with the girls. So going on a girls' thrift day, I highly suggest to do that. It's so much fun. So much fun, and definitely a different experience than when you take your children with you. It's just, you need to have both experiences. So I highly recommend to do both as often as you can. You're not uninterrupted with like tantrums and crying, because all of that has happened to me in the thrift store for sure. For sure. But you know, you navigate it. And the kids love the thrift store. I mean, obviously there's toys, right? But I just think it's so fun to have an uninterrupted experience with the girls, or with, you know, family, or even by yourself. I've gone many times by myself and I enjoy that as well too. So highly recommend some solo or girly thrift trips. So if you are thrifting with kids, like I do a majority of the time that I go, I will stop by the toy section. No shame. I will let them pick one toy to either carry around the store. It just kind of depends, like if I feel like they have too many toys at home, but I'll let them either take that toy home, like I'll buy it for them, a cheap toy, or I'll make them put it back and they understand that they can't bring it home with them. But if you want to avoid tantrums, you might as well just buy the toy. Like if it's cheap and you feel like you can spare a few more spaces in the toy room at home. But yeah, I will stop by the toy section and let them just have something, you know, like they're on this thrift trip with me, and I feel like you can just get them a little toy and it's not going to harm anything. It's going to make my experience better, so why not? So I highly recommend that with kids. And if you don't want to get them a toy, I've done this before where I get them like a little sticker book or some kind of little activity to do in the stroller while I thrift. So that works too. But I do recommend bringing something or stopping by the little toy section so they feel a part of your trip and, you know, they're not really wanting for anything. So that's something I definitely recommend. Okay, so when talking about thrifting with kids, another tip I have is to bring snacks. This has saved me so many times when I'm having tantrum meltdowns in the thrift store. You just pull out a snack. Snacks save me when we go in public all the time. I think that's a great parenting tip, if you just bring some healthy snacks, like fruit leathers, little crackers, I don't know, fruit. I always bring fruit so that way, you know, they feel fed and well taken care of if they're hungry, because my kids always get hungry when we go out. They are some true snacker kids, and I always bring snacks, so that's another really good way to keep them kind of calm in the thrift store, is always bring the snacks. Okay, so something else I highly recommend is if you are looking for a very specific item, like let's say you're looking for, I don't know, a certain kind of vintage art piece or a crock or something like that, or like a little vintage whisk broom. I'm just like naming things that I see right now. Or I don't know, some kind of anything you're looking for specific, I highly recommend, even if it's not vintage or antique, online. You can find more intentional pieces that you might not be able to find in the thrift store online. Instagram, Facebook Market, there's so many different places you can thrift online. My favorite places are Facebook Market and Instagram to thrift. I'll try to remember to leave my favorite Instagram accounts that I thrift from that have antique and vintage pieces, as well as Facebook Market's just random. But you can always find some really good things on there as well. So highly recommend online thrifting if you're looking for something very specific. But it's so fun to like go on the hunt and look for it too. But if you can't find it on your hunt, or you need it by a certain time, or whatever the case is, online is great for those very much intentional pieces. Oh, also I love Etsy for thrifting too. Etsy is a good place. They're a little bit more pricey usually on Etsy, but you can thrift some good antique. All right, so something else that I love to do is to, okay, so let's say you're buying electronics at the thrift store, like a sewing machine or a stand mixer or just any kind of electronic, a lamp, a vacuum. You want to make sure you plug it in before you buy it. I can't stress that enough. Whatever electronic pieces you are buying, always ask to plug it in before you commit to purchasing it. Highly recommend to do that. That is like a really good way to ensure that it works, because who wants to buy something that doesn't work? So always plug it in before you buy it. So I highly recommend to do that every single time you're even thinking about buying an electronic piece, is just make sure that it works. Make sure. Anyways, you guys, that is it for this video. I feel like it was kind of short, but let me know if you like these kind of thrifty tips and how I navigate the thrift store. Let me know if there's any other questions you have for me when it comes to thrifting and how I handle certain situations, or however I go thrifting. Let me know if you have any more thrifty questions on how I navigate the thrift store. I hope this kind of covered everything, but if not, I can do another video on how I like to thrift and the things I look out for and my little tips for that. But I like to keep it pretty simple and fun when I go thrifting. But these are always things that I just keep in my head for when I go, to make my experience a little bit lighter and easier, especially with children. It could be a little bit difficult to go, and I know a lot of you have told me that you love thrifting but you feel overwhelmed with kids, and I get it. I 100% get it, because I've been there many times. But these are the things that have helped me, just thrifting with kids as well as just thrifting in general. It just makes your thrifting experience a little bit easier for sure. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Leave your favorite thrift tips down below. Like, what do you do? Like, what is your thing that makes your thrifting experience easier, or some little hack or tip, or just leave something. Just say hello in the comments. I love talking to you guys down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. When I went to go turn the camera off, I just stepped on a Lego and was trying not to like show the pain, but oh my gosh, I need to remember to pick these Legos up, or have them pick it up before I film, because they live on my floor, okay? They just live there. That's their home.